Hey everyone, Miss Janine here. I want to do just I'm going to say a short video over chapters 1 and 2, but you will learn when I say short, I tend to get a bit long-winded because I like to share. So, your readings for this week will be chapters 1 and 2, and I've prepared a short written lecture with some highlights, but I want to go through the book, so you'll see me looking down a little bit. So, just as if we were in the course room, I would be looking down and maybe interacting. But I want to just share with you some of the things that I think are important. And so if I think they're important, that means they're probably on a test, and you will be having a quick, easy online test at the end of this first week, so don't let that scare you. So turn to your book on page 2, chapter 1, and we're going to be learning, this is general psychology, about people, the founders, the people that blazed the trails and did research. We're going to be learning about some of the crazy things that have happened with research and why we have APA standards, ethic codes. So when we turn your book to page 2 and 3, at the very bottom you see all these people. I want to make sure, so if you tend to mark up your book, mark along as I tell you what to know, what's important. We have Wilhelm Wundt. He established the first psychology laboratory at the University of Leipzig, Germany. So he's basically the founder, the father. Different books will have him listed different ways. Wilhelm Wundt started it all. Then we have William James and Mary Whiton Calkins. Now, James was a legendary teacher-writer, and Mary Whiton Calkins was one of his students. And they became famous. Well, Mary became famous for her memory research and being, this is key, Mary Whiton Calkins became the first woman president of the American Psychological Association. Mary Whiton Calkins became the first woman president of the American Psychological Association. Now, when you are on page 3, that we've got the 3 columns in the book, look at the left column at the top. Now, Mary Whiton Calkins, she went to Harvard, and she did all the coursework to get a PhD, but she was denied her PhD because she's a woman. Shame on them, right? But again, you have to keep in mind what was going on in this era. So that's very important. Mary Whiton Calkins did not get a PhD. She was denied because she was a woman. That's key. So make sure you put a little cha-ching in your book. But she did become the first female president of the American Psychological Association. Then we have Margaret Washburn. After Harvard refused to grant Calkins the degree she had earned, Washburn became the first woman to receive a PhD in psychology. So Margaret Washburn became the first woman to get a PhD. These sound like test questions, don't they? Now we move on to John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner. There's some scandal with these two. Now, Watson did Little Albert, and as we continue on, I'll post the video with Little Albert, and you can learn about that. And Rayner was his research assistant. And we will, I'm not sure if it's in this chapter or another chapter, you get to learn a little bit about the scandal of those two. I think it's in another chapter, so I'm not going to tell you. You'll have to wait. Just like a good book, you got to wait till the end. And then we have B.F. Skinner. Everybody knows B.F. Skinner. He's a leading behaviorist. He rejected the idea of studying inner thoughts and feelings, and he studied consequences. And then we have Sigmund Freud, the controversial ideas. He did a lot. So real quick on page 2 and 3, you're going to want to know these people. Psychology, the term, let's call it the tan box in your book. Psychology, put a little star by that term. Science of behavior and mental processes. Psychology, the science of behavior and mental processes. Got it? We're going to look over on page 4 just real quick because I'm already at 5 minutes on this video, so I know you don't want to listen to me forever. Look at table 1-1, be familiar with it. Psychology has lots of branches, lots of specialties that you could choose. So look at those. The big ideas on page 5, the 4 big ideas in psychology. Critical thinking. If you were in a seated class with me, you would always hear me saying, apply critical thinking. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with the book. But if you're going to make a stance on something, find some research to back it up. And I can guarantee there is research out there that backs up whatever you're probably thinking because somebody else is that way. We've got critical thinking, the biopsychosocial approach, biology, psychological, and then the social, your environment, how that impacts, two-track mind, dual processing, and exploring human strengths. So read through this section. Over on page 7, they talk about nature and nurture. Were you born this way or did you learn it? Big debates. Over on page 7, tan box, critical thinking, biopsychosocial approach, culture, and nature-nurture issues. You're going to want to know those. Over on page 9, just a little bit on intuition and common sense. Second paragraph, intuition can lead us astray. Our gut feelings may tell us that lie detectors work and that eyewitnesses recall events accurately. Hunches are a good starting point, but thinking critically means checking assumptions, weighing evidence, inviting criticism, and testing conclusions. Good section there. They use the term hindsight bias, the tendency to believe after learning an outcome that we could have predicted it. This is known as, I knew that. I knew it all along. And we all know people who do this, who say this. So hindsight bias is going to be a term you're going to want to know. They talk about overconfidence. And then they get into the scientific attitude, curious, skeptical, and humble on page 11. Great stuff. And we get into, over on page 12, the scientific method. So over on 13, you're going to want to know theory, hypothesis, and operational definition. And we get into talking about research, and they call them descriptive methods. So how do researchers use case studies? They're an in-depth analysis of an individual. Phineas Gage is a very popular one. He's the one who had working on the, I think it was the railroad, and the tapping iron went up and out his head. It changed his behavior. I'll try to remember to go post a video for that one. Naturalistic observation. Naturalistic observation. You're out in the wild watching, or in the mall watching, people just being themselves. Jane Goodall with the chimps is a prime example of a naturalistic observation. And then they talk about surveys and interviews. We've all done surveys and interviews. Thing to remember with surveys, everybody's going to be asked the same questions. So over on page 15 in the tan box, you're going to want to know case study, naturalistic observation, surveys, population, random sample. All of those are really good to know. Over on page 19, I just want to hit some key terms because, again, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Placebo. That's, again, you see it where they were given it, you think of it as a sugar pill. People are given a sugar pill and they thought they had the real medication and voila, they felt better. You know, maybe your grandma gave you a Skittles or an M&M and said that's your aspirin and you felt better. Double-blind procedure, a procedure in which participants and the research staff are ignorant or blind about who has received the treatment or placebo. So, double-blind procedure, double-blind experiment, neither the researcher or the participant, which could be you, neither of us would know who's getting what. So we're both blind. If it's a single blind, I know who's getting the placebo and who's getting the real thing, but the participants do not. So again, placebo, double-blind, placebo effect, all good ones to know. And just keep on reading. Over on page 22, they talk about, in the middle column, the APA ethics codes for researchers. You have to obtain informed consent, protect the participant from harm, keep information about individuals confidential, and debrief. And that is chapter 1. Some good questions are in the chapter test. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 23, 24. Those might be some ones you want to pay some particular attention to. And then we move on to chapter 2, where we're talking about what is going on in your brain with the neural structure. This is a chapter I stress that if biology is not your passion, I don't like people to memorize. I think it's a waste of our dollars. It's not being prudent to memorize. But if you need to memorize and not fully grasp something, this is the chapter where you may just want to memorize for now. And then when you take developmental psych and as you keep moving up through your courses, it all keeps coming back to this. And it's not, I wasn't until my master's program that I really got a grasp of what all this was really talking about. So don't overcomplicate it. Again, you're going to want to look at neurons, dendrites, action potential. In the middle column there on page 30, dendrites listen, axons speak. Look at figure 2.1. It's telling you what's going on and how. And you may think, well, why do we need to learn this for psychology? There's so many things that impact the brain and our behavior. Medications, legal and illegal substances, head injuries, abuse that causes head injuries, birth defects, stroke, diseases such as Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, MS. So all of these, you need to have a basic understanding of what's going on or should be going on, and is there a problem and what could it be if you, again, were to go further into this. Over on page 33, table 2.1, the neurotransmitters, you see these in commercials. When you read through this list, you'll start to realize you're hearing them in a lot of the medication commercials. So we have serotonin. It affects our mood, hunger, sleep. So if you're low on it, undersupply is linked to depression. Well, maybe somebody needs to get their levels checked. Dopamine influences movement, learning, attention, emotion. Oversupply linked to schizophrenia. Undersupply linked to tremors, loss of motor control, and Parkinson's disease. ACH, GABA, norepinephrine. I always have to stop and think when I say some of these. Glutamate, endorphins. Endorphins probably the big one. You know, your body's, you go out and exercise, you get your heart rate going, your natural endorphins are kicking in, neurotransmitters that influence the perception of pain and pleasure. Talk about hitting that wall when you're out running and you're in pain, but you break through and then you're good again. So look at those in the tan box. Endorphins, nervous system, CNS, PNS, nerve, sensory neuron, motor neuron, inner neuron. Just again, be familiar of what is going on. Page 34, you got the peripheral nervous system broken into the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. Look at the figures 2.3 and 2.4 to help guide you on this. Over on 36, they talk about the fight or flight response. It's in the middle or on the far right column on page 36, so be aware of that. Over on 37, they talk about the pituitary gland, the brain stem, the hypothalamus. On 39, reticular formation. Page 41, cerebellum, the limbic system. Limbic system, neural system, including the hippocampus. Hippocampus is memory, learning. Great way to remember hippocampus. Remember the game Hungry Hungry Hippos? But it's kids who like to go to school and learn. So the campus part is learning. So hippocampus and learning. Amygdala and hypothalamus. Big ones you'll hear over and over again. Amygdala, 2 lima bean-sized neural clusters in the limbic system linked to emotion. Hypothalamus, eating, drinking, body temperature. Over on 42, you've got figure 2.2, brain structures. You got 3 brain structures. And one of the reasons or ways to remember that, look at the three colors: cerebral cortex, limbic system, brain stem. Then over on figure 2.13 on page 43, the cortex and its basic subdivisions. You have 4 lobes. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. You'll want to know those over on 43 in the tan box. Frontal lobe, parietal, occipital, temporal, and motor cortex. Be familiar with those. We keep going on into more of the sensory things going on. Lots of good stuff. Over on page 46, left column, remember we've got 3 columns. So the far left, that whole column's really good, but toward the very bottom, association areas found in all 4 lobes. In the frontal lobe, just make a star by that so you be sure and read that. Over on 47, well, figure 2.19 is Phineas Gage, the one I was just talking about earlier. So he's a good one to know. 47, some brain tissue can reorganize in response to damage. That happened, they think, with Phineas Gage. Plasticity, neurogenesis on 47. Corpus callosum, split brain on 49 are all just good. Over on page 51, we're talking more about your states of consciousness. And states of consciousness, not like it's all or I'm awake or I'm sleeping. It's that, think of, you've done it. You're driving, you maybe are on I-95, and all of a sudden you're at where you're supposed to be. And you're like, how did I get here? I don't remember all these stops. That's that kind of altered state, that semi-conscious state. Alcohol, certain drugs, sleeping pills can alter your state. So look at consciousness, selective attention. I always say selective attention is something mothers are really great at doing. We know, we could be you may be trying to do your homework and your kids are running around screaming, jumping on the furniture, and they're okay because you know that tone, that sound. Then you hear something that gets your attention because it's not in the normal. It's the blood curdling, I fell, I'm hurt, or he's killing me, or something. That's the selective attention. It's like you know when to tune in and hear it or pay attention to it, and when you can just be in your little zone, homework zone. So this is a really good section. We get into sleep. Why do we sleep? On page 56, they talk about sleep protects. Sleep helps us recover. Sleep helps us remember. Sleep feeds creative thinking. And sleep supports growth. You're probably going to want to know those. Sounds like a good test question. The effects of sleep loss, there's going to be more accidents, those type of things. Figure 2.32, how sleep deprivation affects us. So just take a look at that. It's pretty good. Sleepwalking, more prevalent in men than women. If you were in my seated class, I would be handing out some journal articles, and we would be looking at the different countries where if you have a history of sleepwalking and you commit a crime, which countries you're liable to go to jail and which ones you're not. Take some time to read on the sleepwalking. I like online, but sometimes because of how I do my online or my seated class format, online just doesn't make it quite as wow. But okay, you're not coming here for the wow, you're coming here to get it done. So REM Rebound is also on page 62. And that is chapters 1 and 2. There will be a short test. And when I say test, don't overcomplicate it. You will have a discussion question. You're going to do a video introduction this week because typically I also teach online, and one of the schools I teach with, they do a video at the very end, and it's like, I wish I had the video at the beginning to see them. So we're going to do video introductions, and I'll do one too, so we can see each other and learn about each other, just as if we were in a classroom and I said, introduce yourself. So I'm going to wrap this up because, again, you could see it went a little bit longer than a few minutes. And if you need me, again, cell phone 910-539-2810. Just send a text. It's the fastest way to get in touch with me. So I'm going to shush. Read chapters 1 and 2. And don't forget to review the grading rubrics and the due dates. And I will see you in the discussion room.